Happy Monday, and welcome to Show and Tell. My name is Jesse Hughes.
And I'm Daniel A. Gilmore.
We're doing Dan's recommendation. It's called City of God. I'm going to let him fill in on all the little details. Director, year.
It was just 2002.
2002.
I didn't write down the directors. It was two of them, though.
Okay.
And this was their first movie.
Names you can't pronounce, I'm assuming.
Exactly. That's why I didn't even bother. I was like, I'm not even going to butcher these names.
I pretended the whole time that not Michael Mann, I'm sorry. Tony Scott directed it. Tony Scott directed Man on Fire and a bunch of other movies that aren't Man on Fire. But very, very high energy directing, in your face, very PC, lots of quick cuts. I love that style of directing because it just keeps the story moving.
Yeah, this is actually the first movie they had directed, though.
Oh, cool. What else have they done?
The only thing I ever looked up afterwards was they did it's called City of Humans.
Oh, was
it's like a sister piece. Technical spin-off sequel.
Okay.
And then they did that for it's a show. It was 4 seasons, and they did a movie of it as well.
Spiritual successor.
I guess it's supposed to be. They said it was less violent and more on the comedic aspect of it, I guess.
That would be interesting to watch. Did you watch that?
I didn't watch it. No.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
But I never known they did that because I saw this movie back in 03 or 04, so it was pretty quickly after it had come out. Cool. I was still in high school when it came out. So.
Cool. I hope you have a lot of tidbits like that. This was, as a foreign movie, it was harder for me to take notes than usual, so I feel like I haven't really gone back through, but I feel like I probably took less notes watching it, mostly because I'm trying to keep up. There's a lot of characters, and the fact that it's a foreign movie and you have to pay attention to what's going on by reading the subtitles, which I had no idea when you recommended the movie that it was foreign until I picked it up the day before I knew I had to watch it. And this is a foreign film. Okay.
Yeah, he asked me at work and he was just like, is this the foreign movie? And I thought he said horror movie. And I was just like, no, it's not.
Not a horror movie at all. I was like, okay, because the subtitle was foreign.
And I'm like, oh, yes, it's a foreign movie. It's subtitled.
But it's not a foreign horror movie.
No.
I love the opening scene. The chicken chase. We're instantly rooting for the chicken. I was like, go to me and my wife, or again, of course, my wife, Amy. I'm watching it with her. We're going, go chicken, go! You got it. It starts with brutality, so you know the movie is going to be brutal, and the brutality in the beginning scene is towards this chicken. So you're rooting for the chicken as they're chasing him.
Yeah.
So this is a movie. One of Dan's pet peeves in films is when a movie starts with the ending. And this is a movie that starts with the ending. How do you feel about that?
It's not so. I don't want to say not obvious in this movie.
It's not. I didn't realize it until...
It works in this movie.
Yeah.
Like I said, I definitely do hate it the majority of the time when films start like that.
But there are exceptions to the rule.
There are always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Which this movie plays into that.
This is one of those.
Theme as well.
Because there's nothing going on where you're like, oh, this is clearly the ending. And then there's still action after.
Right.
Which is another thing I may or may not like. If they're just like, oh, well, that was only this part of the movie.
You're right.
But it works for this film.
Definitely. I think it works for a lot of films. But
if you do it as a stylistic choice is my issue,
right.
I guess. They're just like, oh, it's going to be cool if we end this here. And
right.
We'll come back to that.
It made sense in this movie because it was really this story, this interlacing of stories, and it made sense for us to see the beginning and not really know what the context is until the end. So we see the beginning, but we don't know what it is until we get to the end of the movie.
So watching the intro to the movie, how did I guess you too, but how did Amy feel about it? I guess watching the chicken get butchered.
Amy was into it pretty quickly into the movie, and I was surprised at how consistently she was into the movie for the first half of it because it being a foreign film, it being something she's completely unfamiliar with, it being a fairly violent film, which she doesn't tend to prefer. She was pretty into it throughout the movie, but that was from the very get-go. We were both into it from the chicken scene because it's so, again, it's the directing. For me, more than anything, the directing carries the movie. The story itself is pretty boilerplate. The characters are fantastic. The actors that play those characters are fantastic. And then the directing, just how high energy it is. And so that's from the very first scene. So, they attached a camera to a chicken at some point. There's a shot. It's a really brief shot of just the wings of the chicken. And I'm going, they put a camera on a chicken.
The GoPro.
That's dedication. This style of direction requires a lot more work in terms of, A, directing it, getting the shot you want, and B, editing it. And they, pulled it off both ways, and I have so much respect for that. When you go for that, and then you pull it off. That's what they did in this film.
Yeah, and I was just asking, though, the last time I'd watched this movie, it wasn't very long ago. It was maybe a month or so. But with a vegan, And she was bothered by that scene.
She was bothered by it? No, she should have been like, get out of there, chicken.
Well, just like, no, you're watching them like get butchered though because they're sharpening the knives and they're like skinning the one, or defeathering it, I should say.
Well, of course, but it should be a vegan's dream to then watch
the chicken
that gets away. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But no, yeah, she was watching. She's like, oh, this is a bit much.
And spoiler alert, the chicken does get away. We don't find out until the end of the movie, but the chicken gets away. So, like, throughout my notes, I'm taking notes of the characters in the movie because I want to try to keep up. And so the first two characters that we're introduced to...
Well, Rocket and
Shaggy.
Stringy.
Stringy?
Stringy. Yeah.
The one I watched, the subtitle said Shaggy.
No, Shaggy is the main brother, like in the Tender 3. But when he's walking in the street... That's Stringy.
Okay, so I guess I never wrote down Stringy. See, this is how convoluted the characters are in this movie.
Well, they all have, like, it's foreign, so it's a little bit harder to keep up with that, too. Right. And they all have nicknames.
My thing is, though, that it's actually easier to keep up because of the nicknames. Typically, I'm watching a foreign film, and I have a very hard time keeping up with characters, especially their names, because they're unique. You know, it's not Fred and George. You know, it's not American names.
That makes sense.
But in this, they have
I know, like Ron and Hermione.
Right? Yeah.
It's so rough.
Yeah, tough. But, you know, it's all these characters, and in this film there's more characters than is typical for a film or a foreign film, but they give them these nicknames, which made it easier for me to follow what was going on and who was who.
They were terrible shots as they're chasing the chicken.
Oh yeah, exactly.
They're shooting at the chicken as he's running away.
A typical action staple. Yeah, no one is shooting this chicken, and you've got at least a dozen kids aiming for this fowl. There's a lot of variety with, again, I'm going back to the directing, camera angles and the way the film is shot in various scenes. So you'll have a scene that's a typical, like, even a conversation between one person and another, but there's so much variety in how it's shot from so many different angles, and to some, you know, it might be jarring, but to me it was very interesting just to kind of see the different angles that they could get throughout the film, and I might be referencing a couple of those as we go.
They're just playing the soccer, and then he goes, I never had the guts to follow the Tender threesome or whatever they're called. Tender trio. It's not threesomes. But and he just flips off Goose, who's his brother.
The threesome was in the hotel. The Tender threesome we witnessed die in the hotel.
No, they don't die.
No,
well, I mean, they die.
Threesome.
That threesome.
Yeah, okay. That threesome.
But
flips off his brother.
Yeah, just flips off. And I was like, brotherly love.
Exactly. The brother element of this movie, from blood brothers to these hypothetical brothers in these families, you know, of these gangs, is very well developed in the movie. Throughout the opening scenes, I got a really great sense of place, and I guess that's easy to do because I'm assuming they filmed this on. I don't know, where are they? Where is the city?
Okay, so it's Rio de Janeiro.
Okay, yeah,
and then it's I don't know, it's a city that's apart from it, Ciudad de Jesus, whatever.
Okay,
or not? That's Deus, not Jesus, but God.
So that makes sense. Yeah, the sense of place in the film, no matter where you are, it drew you right in because it was very consistent, and of course that's easy to do when you're filming it in Rio de Janeiro, which I'm assuming.
And it wasn't actually filmed within the city of God,
right?
Because they said it was too dangerous to do there.
Yeah,
but they filmed it in like another city close by. If they had realized how dangerous it was even to film in the favelas, they wouldn't have done it in the first place.
So I think it's a good time to bring it up. I didn't realize this till the end of the film when they're showing what I assume is actual interview footage, but is this a true story?
Yeah, it's based on a true story, like real life events.
Yeah,
it's directly based off a novel of the same name, City of God or Ciudad de Deus.
And is the novel written by someone involved in?
It's written by Paolo Linz. Rocket is a self-insert character who is he's like amalgamation of himself and a childhood friend who wanted to be a photographer.
Okay, that makes sense. See, that's very interesting. Yeah, that was something I picked up towards the end, because in the beginning, unless I missed it...
no, they never referenced it until the end. That's actually my note for the last thing, is the first time I watched it, and he's like, oh, by the way, I'm also this famous photographer now, based on real events. And I was like, holy shit. And my mind was blown.
That's a cool way to do a twist. It's like, you didn't know this was based on a true story.
Yeah, that's why I told you when you watch, was like, do not look up anything, because sometimes it'll be on Wiki as you watch it.
Which I typically don't do, and I didn't. The next character we meet is Lil Dice, who ends up being... And it took me a while, like halfway through the movie, till I realized who was who from the beginning scene. Which again is just, it's harder to keep up with so many characters and so many nicknames. And then they introduce Lil Z in the middle of the movie, and I'm going, he's Little Dice, right? And then I felt very vindicated
even says,
when it was
he says,
okay.
"Hey, Little Dice," and he goes, "No, it's Little Z now."
Yeah, once my question of who was about 10 minutes before that scene, and then it was, oh, he is the same person. Okay, good. I don't feel so stupid then. Apparent very early on in the movie is the performances, so I'd reference the actors. Within, the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, the performances are all very natural.
There is only one professionally trained actor in this film.
And that's what I assumed, and that's what surprised me most.
And it's the character of Carrot.
Oh, really?
He was the only actual person with acting experience.
Wow.
Everybody else, they did like an open casting for realism purposes, and cast them out of real some of them were actually from the real city of God and the surrounding area. They sent them for 3 months to a training acting camp kind of thing.
Wow.
But they were all just real people. And then I guess afterwards they were just well, we can't put them back in this place. And they did a charity to get them better off.
That's cool.
Which is really cool, but I guess obviously it raised awareness having this movie out.
Right.
But they said nothing has really changed.
Yeah, that's what's apparent by the end of the movie. The very ending, it's kind of a cycle. That makes sense to me though, because throughout the movie, I'm thinking these are very natural performances. There's not really a moment where you look at someone and go, "This is an actor playing a role." And that's obviously what makes a great film.
Yeah, and then so they haven't introduced him yet, but like I said, Carrot was the one actor that was actually or person that was actually an actor,
right?
And I guess he promised them he was going to get lost in the role, and so he spent 3 months before they did the filming just inside the city, I guess, living.
What about Thiago? I mean, he's a white actor. Was he?
He must have been a real person too. They said most of the actors, so I'm guessing there was probably a few because obviously we haven't met that character yet either. But Sue George was Knockout Ned.
Oh, that was Sue George. Wow, I didn't realize.
Yeah, you didn't realize that was him?
See, I don't. For your movies, I let you do all the trivia, so I didn't realize that was Sue George. Love Sue George.
Well, I know. I'd actually heard of him before this movie had even come out, so I'd known when I watched it. I was like, "Oh, Sue George, awesome!"
That's awesome.
And then obviously he did Life Aquatic, and what was that 05, I guess, or something like that,
right?
Maybe more 4.
Yeah,
but yeah, this was a few years before Life Aquatic.
Very cool.
And he was just kind of at that point a cult musician, you know, in Brazil.
Very cool inclusion. He's a knockout.
They robbed the truck.
Oh yeah,
and they come up wearing bandanas over their faces, then immediately pull them off.
Yeah, exactly. You guys, you don't get the point of the bandana.
And so I was just laughing, and I was like, obviously, why would they even wear them if they assume everybody in this village is going to take care of them?
Right.
Because they're kind of being Robin Hoody and giving everybody gas and whatnot.
And then into the brothel scene.
Yeah. Then the next scene is he's just like, we didn't make money.
Yeah.
And then Little Dice is just like, I've got a plan.
Of course.
And then they go over the plan.
They run through the brothel, and we were very confused by the end of it as they roll through the scenes after they've left the brothel and everyone's dead, and we're going, they didn't do any of that. Yeah. And I was like, is this a directing inconsistency? Still early enough in the movie that I'm going, is this an inconsistency with storytelling, or is there something they're not telling us? And of course we realize later, again, very cool way to tie it up, what actually happens. And that's what I was hoping for.
Just within it's the motel, Goose just comes in, he's just watching these people have like a threesome or foursome or whatever it is.
That's what I appreciate about the film is the variety of the characters. You've got the characters that want to get in, get the stuff, get out. You've got the characters that want to be really quiet and not be made seen, whereas the other ones are, hey, they're putting their guns in their faces and going, give me all your stuff.
Well, because Shaggy goes in there, he's like, the people are sleeping, and he's just like grabbing stuff.
Yeah.
And then Goose is just watching them have sex.
Right.
And then the next scene he's just like, give me that stuff. And knocks the guy. And then Clipper goes in, he's just like, he sees the guy, he's like, you're from the church? And he hands him like a gold necklace with a cross. And he's like, I am, brother. And just hands it to him and walks out of the room.
Yeah. The Good Samaritan. He's the real Robin Hood.
Which is fantastic, I think.
Yeah, great scene. There's the scene in the treetops. You've got Rocket is in the top of the tree, right?
No. Rocket is the main
that's
character. It's Goose and Clipper.
Goose and Clipper in the top of the tree. And then you have the water dripping off.
And then there's like a random cut to fish.
Yeah, I have a fish, question mark?
Yeah, and that was literally the same thing I took. Fantastic fish, question mark.
I love you.
That's why we do this, best friends.
Very stylish scene, but I want to know what the
significance was there.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the same thing.
Yeah, villagers chasing a child, and they end up shooting him and say, okay, he wasn't.
No.
Was it villagers or were they cops?
It's because that's Melonhead.
That was my question.
Planting a gun on him.
Okay, yeah, they plant a gun on. I wasn't sure if they were cops or villagers.
So yeah, Clipper climbs down from the tree and just says, "I'm done with being a hood. I'm going to go to the church." And he's like, "The cops are still there." He's like, I don't even care. Walks into the street. The cops are like, "Hey, stop." He keeps walking.
Yeah.
A guy behind him
misdirection
goes, "Wait, what?" and runs away.
Yeah.
And then they gun him down.
Yeah.
And then plant a gun on him.
You never know. And I loved the shot afterwards. They
where he shoots the bullet.
Yeah, and so it's going to hit Clipper.
Yeah.
And it's a rear view mirror.
Yeah.
Brilliant
Which I
shot.
thought was cool.
Loved that shot. Then you've got the scene between Goose and his new fetish. Is it Goose?
So you're talking about the scene with Shaggy
where she's washing the dishes.
Yeah, that's Shaggy.
Shaggy. Okay. Good grief. Hoods don't love, they desire.
Yeah.
And so I like that line. And then hoods don't stop, they take a break, which is a recurring line.
And
in the
hoods
movie.
don't talk, they smooth talk.
Yeah.
Lest we not forget.
So yeah, I like that scene as she's washing the dishes kind of breaks down lust by definition, basically, with those two lines.
Well, that's the whole thing with their relationship, I think. Okay, he sees her immediately and is just like, the samba music plays.
Yeah. So it's apparent that this is an encounter. It's not love. It's an encounter.
Their next scene, he's like, I think I love you.
Yeah.
I just might believe it, and they just start making it.
Exactly. And my wife goes, well, that was easy. It doesn't work like that, guys.
Another transition into the 70s now. He's in high school.
Now we're in the 70s. We're on the beach.
So yeah, he's still hanging out with Stringy, doing his thing. Mm-hmm. He's talking about being a virgin.
Yeah.
Cut school.
So this is a theme that comes up throughout the movie, and it was something I actually didn't expect to be wrapped up, and it is, which was
him cool. being a virgin.
Yeah. It was. I just thought it was a character trait, and that was it. It was maybe something we'd see wrapped up with the person he wants to lose his virginity to, but when that becomes apparent that that's not going to happen.
Well, he almost closes the deal with her.
Almost. That's the thing. It's very
until those runts are introduced.
Tough. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's we're introduced again to Rocket as a teenager, and he wants to lose his virginity to this. Yeah.
So this is when they introduce. They cut school, go to the beach. They introduce his passion for photography as the group photographer.
Right. And then she's the ultimate tease. She gives Rocket a kiss on the cheek, and it's like,
well, because he's gonna go get her some weed.
Well, exactly,
because he's essentially like what men perceive as the friend zone. Mm-hmm. He doesn't act in any way sexual towards her,
right?
But wants something more.
And in his mind, he should be
also,
going,
I'm a feminist. You couldn't tell.
In his mind, he should be going, that'll be $20. And she's like, here's a kiss. He's like, all right, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes, is like, oh, I'm going to impress her by getting some pot. Goes to see Blackie.
Yeah, so this is
this is when they introduce Little Z now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is another scene where I started taking note of names. We got Blackie, we meet Big Boy, who dies pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and Carrot, who is a main character throughout the rest of the film. I loved this scene because it starts in this
hotel.
Yeah, it starts in this apartment, and then they have this transformation, and it's a transitional scene that tells us something we didn't know we wanted to know. They walk into this apartment, and we don't know that we want to know how this apartment became Big Boys and then became Carrots, but they tell us anyway, and it's very interesting. And again, it's very concise because of the editing and the directing. It's like a 4-minute scene, but it breaks it down from when it first became a place where drugs were dealt from to
it's
where
just
it is now.
This woman selling drugs to make ends meet, essentially.
Yeah.
To this guy kills her to sell drugs. To Carrot inheriting the business,
right?
To Blackie taking the apartment.
And it's a very cool breakdown, and there's never another scene like it in this movie. And again, that's another consistent thing, is that there's a lot of variety in how they tell the story, and this is the story of how this apartment came to be, and we never see another story that breaks it down in such a way, which is refreshing, I think.
Okay, so this is, they introduce now then Z and Benny again. He goes, oh, Dice, it's you. And he goes like, it's not Dice anymore, it's Z.
Yeah.
Then they show how he got that name.
Exactly. He killed everyone at the hotel. Yeah. And then I went, damn, he killed everybody at the hotel. That smile, though. He's like the Joker of this movie. He's absolutely menacing. The actor that plays him both as a child and as a teen.
That's pretty fantastic.
Very fantastic. Yeah. He's menacing. You hate him, but you don't want him to die because you want to keep watching him perform. Both as an actor and a character, because it's so intriguing to see the joy that he gets from the menace that he brings, basically.
So I like that shot too, is when they show him killing Goose, and then it's him shooting him, and it's him shooting people just throughout the years, until this moment.
Just to kind of show us this menace has carried on throughout up until where he is now. Yeah.
So I guess the director gave them notes to quick little tidbit. he had the actor that played Goose bully the actor in real life, and they said it backfired because he like threatened to walk off the set one day.
Dang.
Because he got slapped too hard or something.
Well, I mean, that means you're doing it right.
Yeah, but I just thought it was pretty crazy.
And then this is where you see those interlocking stories. We go back to the scene with Lil Dice and Benny when so-and-so
when he kills Goose?
Kills Goose, yeah.
He's like,
Goose.
tell
And
Shaggy that this guy's flapping his lips. I'm out of town.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, wait, this is from Shaggy.
Yeah,
and then he just
boom,
murders
boom,
him.
you're dead, yeah. So it's like we know who the villain is, and we know where the vengeance story lies from Rocket's perspective. And then...
Well, and Rocket even says at this point, like, I should have avenged my brother. Or I could have avenged my brother here or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they show Tiago buying Coke.
Yeah.
From them.
So that's the first scene where he's a tweaker. We know that.
Yeah, you see that now that he's clearly a tweaker. And then Benny borrows somebody's bike to chase after him for no reason.
Oh, yeah. So that scene was very strange to me. Let me find my note.
This is mine here. It's just Benny chasing this guy, who obviously Tiago, and having him buy clothing is the true romance of this film. I felt.
Yeah,
it felt like it was like the setup for a romantic scene.
Yeah, I was very thrown off by it because I thought, okay, he's putting a gun in the back of his pants and he's chasing after him. He's going to race him somewhere secluded and he's going to shoot him. But then he's like, no, dude, make me awesome.
Yeah,
like, all right,
and
cool.
he's like, well, how am I gonna? What's your size? He's like, just measure me with your hands.
And then he hands him a wad of cash and begins his reputation as the coolest hood in the city of God.
Yeah,
and he really is. Very cool, very cool.
Benny, the true hero of this film.
Exactly. Yeah. Little Z is forcing these two children as he wants to make an example of them so that they can go tell their friends who's in charge.
Okay,
of the hood.
because he tells Carrot to stop having the runs, commit crimes and hold-ups and stuff, and he's like, "No, let them do whatever they want. This is my territory." And then he finds them to avoid being arrested, essentially.
Right. And
too much suspicion.
Yeah, and then that scene itself is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's pretty painful to watch, especially just because it's kids crying, and I kind of hate that sound.
Well, especially when it's a convincing performance, and again, these were obviously kids that are from that area.
Yeah, and so I the note on that one was, I guess, that kid that gets shot in the leg, or the foot, it is. They asked him whatever his greatest fear was, and it was going to the dentist and having like a toothache. So they just said to imagine that the tooth was in your foot.
Dang.
And that was their note. Yeah, but pretty painful to watch scene.
Very tough scene.
As far as just two kids, having to get shot in the foot and then kill each other.
What would you do? What would you do if you were the child given the gun and you had to shoot one of those two kids? You have three choices. You can shoot one, the other, or basically yourself.
You're all going to get killed.
Well, eventually, yeah.
In that scene.
But would you...
Well, no, but that kid becomes steak and fries.
Well, yeah, that's what then my next note was. Steak was the next nickname. Yeah. But what would you do?
I don't know. I wouldn't be in that situation.
That's true.
Okay, so here's my whole thing as I was watching it, and I'm like, everybody's like, oh, Benny's the coolest hood. Like, yeah, Benny's still a hood, though. So, he's hanging out with this guy who's just like a sociopathic murderer. And he's like, dude, I love you. You're my brother, but I can't deal with you anymore.
I can't deal with I'm going to die tomorrow anymore.
Yeah, and so I was like, I don't, as cool as Benny is, you're going to be killed if you continue in this lifestyle, Benny.
Yeah.
And then same thing with these runts. Oh, it sucks they're kids, but they're these shitty kids.
Yeah, exactly.
That are robbing stores and stealing money, and then at the end making a literal death list.
But it's that nature versus nurture argument is, do they have a choice? The runts that are growing into this
obviously you're
life.
in this crappy lifestyle. It's kind of Rocket says it best. He's like, I don't want to be a hood or a cop because I don't want to be shot.
Right. Exactly.
And then he's like, I only go to school because I don't want to do manual labor. It's your choice at the end of the day.
Exactly.
If you don't have this fear of being killed, and you think it's literally like crime is. They always say crime doesn't pay. It pays until you are caught.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like the easiest lifestyle in that it's it's high risk, high reward.
But also it's the shortest lifestyle. Yes. When you look at it pays until it's over.
Exactly.
And so it's hard for us to put ourselves into that situation. And you won't answer that question. What would you do? I won't either, because it's hard for us to put ourselves into that situation.
But it is I personally would not be in this situation.
Exactly.
If I was in some situation where this guy just found me on the street and was like, here's a gun, I don't know what I would do because I'm in a completely different headspace, though.
Right.
I'm not a criminal in this sense. I'm a victim at this point.
And then it jumps into these, the film is broken into these little segments, and this chapter is called Sucker's Life. And from this point, I'm just writing the chapters down as I'm trying to follow the film. Like I had mentioned earlier, the film is very boilerplate. So far in the film, the acting is fantastic, directing is fantastic, but there's not really a whole lot of surprises in terms of the story and how it plays out. That flips, that rule of this particular
like I said,
film.
like for me, because you're like, yeah, it's a boilerplate story.
Right.
The surprise at the ending, I was like, oh, this mostly happened.
Exactly.
Like,
the film, well, yeah, for it to have mostly happened, and then the last 20 minutes are where all the twists fall in and where they tie up all the loose ends, and so we'll get into that as we get towards the end. So they have the sucker's life, which we can, that sucker's life, boom, and then flirting with crime was a very entertaining chapter because it's all these situations where Rocket has an opportunity to be a hood. I like the first story is knock out Ned, and they're going to go hold him up.
Yeah, we're going to rob this guy. Like, no, he's too cool.
He's way too cool. Exactly. That's all it takes. It just takes one positive person to turn around the mind of someone who's thinking of going in a negative direction.
And then same thing, like they get off and they eat food. And then,
what the line is, what do I say? I don't know. This is a holdup. And then, I couldn't hold up that waitress. She was too cute.
Yeah, and she gives him his number.
Right.
Which he then immediately smokes with the cool
cabbie that they're going to hold up,
yeah.
but they can't because he's too cool.
Yeah.
He sucks at crime, but that's for the best, obviously. So then Benny tells Lil Z, you need a girlfriend, Lil Z. And at that point, that was the point when I went, well, Benny's going to die. And I thought it was going to be Lil Z that was going to kill him. And, of course, they're childhood friends.
No,
so
he's never going to hurt him.
It's harder to believe. But, I mean, you see it in his eyes in several scenes leading up to his death.
But I think
that was the line he said that made me realize that Benny is not going to live through the rest of the film. And then Benny's farewell is the next chapter.
Which is a big party. Everybody's there.
And I'm going, Benny's going to die. In a flurry of techno music, Benny's going to die in this scene.
And he does, because Benny is the only good character, and his goodness
he cannot live.
Gets him killed.
He cannot live in the city of God and all of its violence that sucks.
No, because it's the guy that he spares and says he doesn't have enough, let him go. And then that guy shoots him by accident.
Right. That was confusing to me. So this is where the camera is introduced that they want to give to
Rocket, yes.
Which becomes significant later on. And then I'm going, they're fighting over the camera now. Lil Z is jealous. He's going to shoot Benny. And then this little kid walks up and just shoots him. And I didn't realize who he was at the time. Was it? Who was it? Was it Tuba? No, it wasn't Tuba. It was... He has a name. Anyway,
was it Blackie that shot him?
Blackie, I think, was the character.
Okay.
No, Blackie... Didn't Blackie die?
No, he shoots him in the leg and says, you work for me.
Okay.
So it might have been Blackie that shot him.
Oh, man. We'll continue this next week.
Yeah.
No,
looking back in retrospect on Adventure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Blackie, because it's whoever he gets his life to be spared.
But yeah, we find out that he meant to shoot Lil Z, which is a cool twist.
Because nobody was going to shoot Benny. He's the coolest thing.
Exactly, yeah. And then that club shot from a panned out angle of the flashing lights, and then just Benny and Lil Z on the dance floor. Another fantastic shot.
Yeah, well, most of this movie is super well shot.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think there was any glaring errors.
This is a PSA for people who like cinematography and good directing. If you shy away from foreign films, if you shy away from action films, whatever it is, watch this film if you like cinematography and directing, because it's very unique and it's very, very well done. Mm-hmm. The film kind of took a turn that I didn't expect. So this is the first point in the movie, about half an hour from the end, that the movie begins to twist itself beyond what you expect it to be. Yeah. Knockout Ned is the hero. Knockout Ned is the one who is going to be gunning for...
Well, he's not a hero at this point.
He
becomes a vigilante and then into, like, anti-hero, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, they call him the unlikely hero of the story.
He's really not. He becomes a pretty shitty dude at the end.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. But it was a twist that I didn't expect. Meeting Knockout Ned, and I had kind of forgotten that Rocket said, we'll get back to his story later, so apparently there's some significance to this, and this is where the significance
is. My note here, though, was just, it's like listening to a drunk guy tell a story. Mm-hmm. Have you ever watched, like, Drunk History or anything like that? Yeah. So he's like, oh yeah, but there's Rocket. But we'll talk about Rocket later. Ned's a character, but we'll get to him in a minute.
It reminded me of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Second time referencing that movie. We've both seen it. So. But yeah, that's a movie where it's like,
Christmas movie, though.
I forgot something. Yeah, great. Yeah. This is going to be our last show before Christmas, though. Dang.
True.
Merry Christmas, guys. They go to Thiago then, who is the war is on basically between Knockout Ned and Lil Z, and it goes to Thiago, who just wants to get some coke to satisfy his craving, basically. And I thought it was a really nice touch that he has scabs all over his arms to just kind of depict that he's been picking at himself because he's an addict now. I thought that was a nice touch. And this was another really cool scene in terms of how the transitions went to tell us a story as quickly as possible. This is an extremely dense story, all in all, but it's told in just
2 hours.
Just over 2 hours. Yeah. Like, that's very impressive, and it's all because of the editing and the directing. The story of Knockout Ned who when we meet him there in the house, refuses to be a hood.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not a hood. We're not going to do robberies, and we don't kill people.
Within 5 minutes, they show us their next 3 robberies, and then boom, he's a hood, and his ideals have completely changed. But it's not sudden, like it's believable in the way that they tell it, which is really impressive.
Well, because what do they say? It's the rule, the exception.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's the rule, and there's the exception. Exactly. Yeah, you've got the cops that are paid off by Lil Z. Which shows you why he has succeeded so long and why he continues to succeed against an army that is perhaps bigger.
Well,
than he
like
is.
Even Ned kind of says it because when he gets arrested, or he's in the hospital and he's in there, like, they keep arresting me. Why aren't they arresting him?
And that interview is very. If the last scene in the movie is from the actual interview,
I believe it is because they say that's the guy.
Very verbatim interview, which I thought was really cool. A great scene is where Rocket gets the camera that was meant for him all along from Benny, and then he takes the photos, and then he goes to get the photos developed by his friend in a newsroom,
and he says, "I can't do this for you,"
and he's surprised when they steal the photos.
He says, "I can't do it," and then the other guy is just like, "Oh yeah, this is also my film," has it developed for him.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
but then it's like with all his photos, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, we could use these."
Yeah, but he was surprised they got used for the newspaper.
Yeah.
What did you expect, dude? I know you had no way to develop these, but come on.
Well, I just like his reaction because he's like throwing out the newspapers, looks at the newspaper, and is like, "Oh no!
Oh crap! I'm gonna die now!"
And then berates this woman.
So as soon as he meets Marina, I went, "That's who he's gonna lose his virginity to." Oh. And I saw her and went, "That's clearly why they're introducing this character." But I don't believe that he's going to. I don't believe in the story of them making love. But they defied that expectation. It made sense in the context of the very, like the 2-minute scene that they show. They smoke pot together. And
an interesting fact here, though, is when he's like, "Where am I going to stay?" And it cuts to them walking into her house, kind of thing. And he says he has never taken a hot bath before, or she's like amazed by this.
Yeah,
that's actually not scripted.
Oh, really?
He was just recounting his life to her as a person, saying that he had never taken a hot bath before.
And it was a perfect segue into his first sexual experience.
Yeah.
And then this was the point where it goes back to the beginning of the movie, and I went, Dan hates this.
No, obviously I recommended this. So.
And then the shot with, and I expected it, but it was still brilliant, was Rocket taking the picture of the gang, aiming for the police, and then as soon as he snaps a picture, gunshot.
He jumps over the wall.
Yeah, very
narrowly escapes.
Very cool shot. And then the big twist at the end, which is Otto. What goes around comes around. Otto is the child of the security guard that Knockout Ned shot in the bank, and so he's going to avenge him as soon as he turns his back. Even though Knockout Ned is going to save this kid's life, he's going to shoot him in the back. The best twist of all, Lil Z's ultimate downfall is the runts. The runts are the ones who kill him. Of course, Rocket is the one who gets the photo. The big problem is the photo with him with the cops. The big problem is the cops that let this happen.
When the little Z gets killed, and then it's like a POV shot from Rocket's perspective.
Yeah.
He actually filmed that scene.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I guess like the director of cinematography just showed him how to use the camera. You're going to film this scene.
That was a great scene.
So I thought that was kind of cool, though.
And then the movie could end at any moment. It really needs to have a concise ending, and I liked how they ended it with, the cycle will continue with the runts. And again, that's true to life. As you said, it's still like that in the City of God, is that these runts are kind of taking over. They talked previously in the film about taking down, we will take over when the older person above us dies, and then they realize we need to take out that person. They take out Little Z, and then they are the ones who are taking over in this slightly comical conversation where they're talking about nicknames. But, of course, it's...
We'll just make it their kill list. And they're like, Giant's going to get whacked.
Yeah. Get over here, Giant. And then the first real name we get in the film at the very end, William Rodriguez. That's my real name. That's who I am now. I'm a photographer. Very cool way to end the film. And then as the credits are rolling, it does the real interview with Knockout Ned to show you that, hey, this was a real story without saying this was based on a true story.
Okay, and then so all the names... a little bit different in the English version, where Rocket was Firecracker.
Okay.
Little Dice, I guess, roughly translate to or being literally Little Eddie, and then Little Zay being Little Joe.
Okay. We refuse to accept that because those are real American names.
I guess Knockout Ned known as Chicken Manny. And
That's a better nickname.
So they said they didn't use chicken because in America, like English, it's viewed as being a chicken.
Coward, yeah.
Whereas it's essentially used as womanizer over there. So it being his nickname being Womanizer Manuel, because Manny being short for Manuel. Shaggy actually literally translated into long hair.
Yes.
Goose was Gargani. I didn't look. I forgot to look it up. Which I don't know what the actual like translation there was, or if there is one. Clippers actually translated into pliers, which I thought was kind of great.
It's a little more menacing.
Stringy was Little Twine, which I thought was fantastic. On the American cover, which I actually never noticed because I don't super pay attention to the DVDs that I own, all the guns are photoshopped out of the photo.
Really?
And it's just them holding their hands and holding imaginary guns.
That's not accurate at all.
But it's weird. I never noticed that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was like a crazy tidbit there.
Yeah.
Seems like you enjoyed the movie. So you'd recommend this then?
Absolutely, yeah.
Obviously you did.
Yeah.
During this podcast.
Of course.
You're like, idiots, watch this movie.
If you don't want to watch it, watch it.
From us just speaking, 4?
Yep, before. I alternated a lot between 3, 3.5, 4 as I'm watching the movie, and I know that's not a good, way to approach a movie when you're watching it, but that's how my mind works. There's a middle section. There's like a 30-minute section I feel like we really didn't even talk about because there was just stuff going on, and it was, again, like I said, the boilerplate nature of the story. That was really my only problem with the movie. That approach kind of got flipped on its head towards the end of the movie for me. There were a lot of twists at the end of the movie, and I absolutely love a movie that wraps itself up satisfyingly, even if it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending. Yes, there's, Lil Z dies, but it's definitely not a happy ending because we know that the turmoil...
The cycle continues.
Yeah, it continues to go on in the City of God, but I felt like all of the stories of these characters were very well wrapped up, and I didn't expect that as I'm watching the film. So that's what brought it back up for me. And again, as I mentioned, the characters are fantastic, and the directing was just absolute aces. So yeah, 4 out of 5 for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Give that a solid 4.
All right, so going into our next episode. So our next episode, I already have the movie I want to recommend. I want to go back into comedy. We're going to watch Big Trouble. It's a Tim Allen movie, but there's a lot of other...
I've seen this movie.
You've seen it?
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this.
I thought you said you hadn't seen it.
No, this is the one with the bomb, right? And it's got a...
Damn it!
Yeah.
So I don't... Hold on, let me go into my list then. Okay, so the movie we're going to watch is... Okay, good. I found a comedy.
So anyway.
So next week, we're going to watch Pirate Radio.
Pirate Radio, awesome. I'm excited to see this.
I know it's on your list. You're going to love it.
It's been on my list.
So Pirate Radio is the next one.
Released.
There's one other thing we're going to do. So our next episode will be 2 milestones. It'll be the first episode that we do in 2016, and it'll be our 10th episode. So I want to do our top 10 movies of 2015, 5 each. So I'll do my top 5, you do your top 5. We'll do it really concise. I want it to be like 10 minutes. It will be a totally separate episode, but I'll release them within a week of each other. So yeah, we're going to do the normal episode on Pirate Radio. It's going to be our next film, and then we're going to do Dan and Jesse's top 10 of 2015. So we're looking forward to that. Hope you guys will listen in to both episodes. I'm Jesse Hughes.
And I've been Daniel A. Gilmore.
You're listening to
Show and
Tell.